Welcome back. Pope Francis is urging almost 70 million Catholics in the United States to study, pray, and, quote, choose with your conscience, close quote, when considering for whom to vote in November. And tonight, two vice presidential candidates who were both raised Catholic try to help their running mate with this very important group of voters. We're pleased to be joined now via Skype by the senior fellow from the Catholic Association, Ashley McGuire, and also with us again for this portion of the program from Newsmax, Washington, my old congressional classmate, Michael Patrick Flanagan. The dominant media culture has played up Tim Kaine's Catholicism, including his missionary work in Honduras, but has paid scant attention to this. And here it is from our parent website, Newsmax.com, the headline reading, Tim Kaine's Planned Parenthood Connections. Ashley, first to you, will that adversely affect the Clinton-Kaine ticket in trying to woo Catholic voters?
I think there's a good reason that it will, and it should. I mean, the bishops, it's not just Pope Francis, it's all of our church leaders, have been very clear that there are certain issues that have a special claim on our consciences when we're voting. And first among those issues is the life issue, and Tim Kaine has a terrible record on that issue. He's pro-choice. His running mate is one of the most extreme pro-choice, pro-abortion candidates ever. She has vowed to repeal the Hyde Amendment, and Tim Kaine has flip-flopped on that issue. So I think the Catholics should be paying very close attention tonight to what he has to say about the life issue. But thus far, his record is a mess.
Michael Patrick Flanagan, our friend Michael Pence was raised Catholic and is now evangelical. Given his traditional stances on pro-life issues, will that be a boon? Will he actually attract Catholics to the Republican ticket?
I think there's every possibility of that being so. Catholics come in two stripes and varieties in this country, those who practice and the overwhelming majority who don't. And those who don't take their Catholicism so serious that it affects their vote. And those who do practice, I think, come down overwhelmingly Republican most of the time. So I'm not sure that the particular stances here is going to have a big wavering in the vote, but it is a big predictor of how they will vote in the fall, and I don't think it's going to be out of the mainstream. I think that anyone who's a practicing Catholic understands that the life issue is incredibly important and that they've got to come down on the Republican side. And I don't know that there's a lot of ways around that, although the Democrats, Mr. Kaine, Hillary, others, Nancy Pelosi is one of my favorites on this subject. They equate it to the I like the soldiers. You know, I support the troops, but I hate the war. You know, I'm pro-choice, but I'm personally pro-life. What the hell does that mean? And of course, it's a way of being able to talk out of both sides of your face. And if they want to go to that place tonight, Pence has got plenty of ammo to nail them down on that.
And Ashley, according to the Public Religion Research Institute, still, Donald Trump is trailing Hillary Clinton among Catholics by a huge margin. Let's take a look. The poll has Clinton with a 23-point lead among Catholic voters. Can that be attributed to what Michael Patrick Flanagan just outlined for us?
Well, Michael Patrick Flanagan makes a good point, which is that you can't just talk about Catholic voters or the Catholic vote. You have to distinguish between essentially practicing Catholics. And the way that we do that, we know this statistically, is to look at how regularly they attend Mass. Regular Mass attending Catholics are the ones who actually bring their faith with them into the ballot box, and they tend to be the group of the Catholic vote that has any sort of predictive influence. You know, people have talked about this election cycle, Donald Trump's performance with that group, but I think that this has been such a highly atypical election that it's really hard to draw any sort of conclusions about even that part of the Catholic vote. But again, you have to look at regular Mass attendance if you want to really have any sort of prediction or clear distinction as to how a Catholic is going to be voting.
A quick follow-up, Ashley, based with my own experience in elective office and appealing to Catholic voters. Though we're not Catholic, two of my children attended parochial high school. And I would be out at football games during my congressional campaign, and one of my aides who was Catholic, he said, whoa, you got to be careful, because it breaks down into two groups. He said the pro-life Catholics and the, quote, social justice Catholics. Is there such a distinction among regular Mass attenders?
Well, Pope Francis has really challenged us on this issue. But, he's made it clear that, first of all, a Catholic always has to be pro-life. Here, he's reminded us of that. I mean, this is something the church has always been clear on, but he's also challenged us to give more attention to the social justice issues. But here's where it breaks down. The Catholic Church gives a lot of freedom to policymakers. In fact, it stresses that decisions about how to handle those social justice issues should be handled at the closest level to the people that they affect. They don't have any one prescription for how to handle the environment or immigration, but they are infinitely clear on the life issue, on marriage, and a number of other unchanging, non-negotiable issues, which, to go back to Tim Kaine, he is out of step with the church on. In fact, he said on the marriage issue, he thinks the church is going to change, which is in step with what Hillary Clinton said, who went even further than that and said that on the life issue, religious beliefs have to be changed. So the church's teachings on certain issues will never change. And on those social justice issues, the church gives a lot of freedom to policymakers and voters to decide what the best way to handle those issues are. But on abortion, nothing.
You mentioned Tim Kaine, and the whole episode, I believe he went and spoke at the Human Rights Campaign Big Black Tie Dinner, saying he thought the church was going to change its position on traditional marriage. That drew a response. I don't know if it's too strong, Mike, to call it a rebuke, from the Bishop of Richmond, Virginia, saying, no, this traditional marriage is scriptural and something the church will remain with. But there is something else that Ashley just mentioned, Mike, in terms of a policy initiative where it seems that Donald Trump, and quite frankly, a lot of us, are at odds with what Pope Francis has been preaching, pardon the pun, and that is the whole notion of open borders and welcoming in people. That stands in stark contrast to Donald Trump and his get tough policy on immigration. Is that another fault line that may account for that large margin in the survey of Catholic voters being in favor of Hillary?
Yeah, I don't know that there are a lot of Catholics for or against Trump, for or against Hillary, who say, well, the Pope says open borders, so I got to go with that. I just don't see there's a lot of that. There are a lot of that will use the Pope as a buttress for their otherwise formed opinion, but I don't think that there are many who say, well, I got to go with him on this one. And as you and I have talked on this show many times about Pope Francis, he's not really a liberal. He just dislikes the United States, and anytime he can stick it to us, he enjoys doing that. And that's because he's a product of South America, not because he's a Catholic. And so he has a founding in a place in the world that doesn't love us a whole lot, and that carries through into his life. So I don't think that there's a lot of people who live awake at night worrying about what the Pope says about this issue or that issue, except the life issue. And we're absolutely right about that. And there's one more with that too, is that when Hillary says that the religion has to change on the life issue, there's a practical implication of this. And all of the Catholic hospitals and other organizations that provide health care are wrestling with this now, is, are we going to provide abortions or are we going to run out of business? And Hillary will run them out of business or force them to change.
And that echoes what Ashley told us earlier. Ashley McGuire, we thank you for your time tonight. We'll follow these issues and how it breaks down the Catholic vote in the days to come. Mike, let me keep you just for 1 second in terms of the nuts and bolts of politics, and that is what happens tonight in the debate. In terms of Pence laying out the case, the fact that they've divided this into 9 different subject areas, 10 minutes in length, do you expect Brother Pence to kind of ignore the themes to go with what is polling hot at this point in time as he challenges Kaine on the Clinton record? About a minute remains.
I think you'll see from Pence tonight, he'll try and answer the question, because he's a gentleman, and that's just how he is. So he'll try and play by the rules and answer the question. But I think you'll see in every question some important policy initiative by Pence that can remotely attach to the question, and you will see a dig of Hillary in there. And I think maybe as an object lesson for the top of the ticket to see how to handle Hillary and still talk issues. And I think you're going to have a lot of that tonight on this is how it ought to look. And Pence is really, really good at this, and it should be a great debate to watch.
And perhaps, dare I say it, the top of the ticket might take a strong hint from the number 2 spot in terms of Mr. Trump preparing for his next debate in this one-and-done deal between the vice presidential candidates. Michael Patrick Flanagan tonight from Newsmax, Washington. Thanks very much. Now, when we continue, vice presidents in history, do you realize the odds of a vice president ascending to the Oval Office? We'll talk about those odds and those probabilities and history of the office and what to expect tonight with presidential historian Craig Shirley. So stay with us as we continue.